to the third episode of UnTrenched with Sandy Mayo and myself, John. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. I will tell you, it happens to be early here and a little bit earlier there. And this morning, it was like the darkest morning to date and very not warm. So I was grateful to finish up the run and come in here to do this with you.
Definitely feeling that shift.
Indeed. So we're going to work on jumping right into it. So one of the things you and I talked about at the end of the last episode, because we evaluate our actions, our conversation each time, is really working to become more comfortable being direct and how we're practicing that. And we're both huge fans of transparency and owning things, and we want to lead in conversations regardless of where they may go. And part of that is also just being genuine in the fact of like, hey, this is uncomfortable for us and we're learning and figuring it out. But we wanted to give each other permission to say, I'm not understanding what the heck you're saying. Can you be more specific? Can you be more clear? And let's get to the heart of the things we're talking about. So excited to see us put that in practice. How about you?
We're going to try. Here it is.
Give it our best. So if this is your first time listening to the show, real quick premise, we are here to have intentional conversations across difference so that we can gain better understanding, respect of one another, build community, and for us personally, grow our faith and better understand our God. So that is what we're looking to do. And the prompt, the question that we agreed upon, though I struggled with it from the moment we agreed upon it till now, was
as is the case each week.
As is the case. But today's question is, do Americans have equality of opportunity? And that is what we are going to use as a launching pad today. So, do Americans have equality of opportunity? What say you?
Oh, sure. Put it at me first. That's great. So, I would say broadly, we have the ideal, right? And I think we hold as a value. I think in practice, like anything else, I think the implementation is always harder than the ideal. And we haven't lived into that ideal fully. So, I kind of think of it in a number of ways. I'm like, do we have equality of opportunity? It's an interesting question because I think the opportunity to try is always there, right? So you set a goal, you want to go after something, whether it's educational, whether it's professional, in your personal life, whatever you're striving towards. I think generally speaking, yeah, we have an equality of opportunity to sort of pursue. So to that, I would say yes. And then I think it gets messy after that, because I think once we sort of work towards the implementation, there's some things that get in the way, and that we may not see actual equality of opportunity. And I'll give specifics. So, I'm going to speak from the areas that I have the most knowledge. So, I've been in education for over 20 years. When I think about the ways in which school districts are funded, and I think about what that means for the opportunities that students have, it can't be missed that although we have stated as a value for the United States that there is equality of opportunity, we implemented policies long ago that created very segregated communities. We created policies long ago that meant that some people had access to loans to be able to buy homes and others didn't, which means that we have already created a landscape of not having equal opportunity. While those policies have been erased, we haven't changed the structure in which we fund schools. And so if we're drawing on property tax and we've created unequal neighborhoods, then ultimately we have unequal schools. And so when we see school districts where students have access to advanced placement courses, technology, all sorts of resources, and we have school districts where students are still struggling to get textbooks, I have to question equality of opportunity is difficult to be realized in that historical context and in our current reality, where sort of those legacies continue to impact us. So the ideal, yes. The equality of opportunity to try to pursue, yes. the equality of opportunity in reality yet to be realized.
Yeah, I can tell this question was on your mind as well, because because
For a while.
I was a bit. I realized when I was wrestling with it over the week that I had not really thought heavily about the implication of the words equality of opportunity, and I needed to before coming into this conversation so that I did not make an arse of myself. And listening to what you just said, I you did a good job of nuancing the things. So for myself, I realized that my bottom line takeaway is no, we do not have equality of opportunity in America. I'm not even sure that's the ideal. I think that we believe in unalienable rights given to us by the creator, by our creator, that we are all to be, all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right. I think that's true. I think that I absolutely agree that we all have equal, we all have the opportunity of choice in this country to say, darn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I don't care the cost. I'm going to get there. Right. And depending on the person, the landscape is so shift that regardless of the reason, on one hand, regardless of the reason, everybody's going to have their own set of challenges and fees to pay to get to where they want to go. Now, when I've really thought about, and what I think you're describing here is when you talk about, I love the specific example, and thank you, because I need specificity. But when we talk about funding now of school districts, right? So the policies that were wrong and unequal and unjust were erased, but there's still a funding issue that is yet to be made equitable. And I really struggled even with the idea of bringing equity into the question because I didn't understand it, but I understand it now as something that's just and fair. And in my mind, that makes sense. So I think that on the one hand, the continued pursuit of the ideal would to make things fair and just, right? And in my mind, it only hurts ourselves as a country if you look at school districts to not want your entire population educated to the best of your ability,
Right.
to not have the brightest minds be able to have the resources to learn so that they can then make the choice, right? But in my mind, an equitable system just helps to prime the pump for more to make the choice to pay the fee and sacrifice to get where they want to go, regardless of where you are in the system, because there's plenty of people, and this is where I've really struggled with it, because from my perspective, when I typically think of like naysayers of the, oh, you don't have amazing opportunity here, right?
Yeah.
I
I
really
know.
think of people who are like embracing this victimhood mentality of it's not being handed to them. And I unequivocally disagree with that. But so that's where I really strongly disagree. But I absolutely do agree that part of the continued work of our country in the pursuit of the ideal of the American dream is to make things fair and just, which is what I'm hearing from you in your example is, hey, we do have an opportunity of choice. We do have these things, but there are specific areas that have not yet been made fair and just, or even logically applied. And one example would be, school district funding is an area that could use attention.
Yeah, and it's just something that's going to be really difficult to unravel because of the landscape that was shaped originally. Like, I actually don't know how you get that back. Like, you would really have to create a new structure in this particular example, because you're never going to make up for lost wealth of not being able to purchase homes. You're never going to be able to completely transform all neighborhoods that have been impacted by the decisions that created segregation. You're never going to be able to bring every school to the same level of resourcing and performance, without some significant disruption, right? And it would take the national will
Mhm.
and to really move forward on that. But I think it's interesting. I mean, you kind of mentioned a few things, and I think that whole concept of like victimhood is interesting, and who gets to decide, um, if someone is portraying victimhood or if they're expressing, hey, this is a genuine fracture. Like,
Mhm.
this is a genuine fracture that was created intentionally. Is it victimhood to call it out and to say this needs to be fixed? Or is that just confronting something that I think will only strengthen us as a nation, as communities, as people?
To that question, I really so in my mind when I say that, I'm specifically thinking about examples. I can't.
Okay.
I do think like at the individual level. Now I do think that that grows into group levels, right? Groups gain the identity of their individuals, oftentimes, right? Like that's why you form organizations. So I'll see one organization in one avenue, right? Like I'll look at vets as an example, or we can look at
Yeah.
schools for like impoverished, minorities, like whatever the case is, right? It I see those who on an individual level are not taking action and ownership and working to confront an issue, and instead are whining and want it resolved for them. And then and to me, that's the victimhood side. That's the negative side. Those are the ones who are getting in the way of progress. Those are the ones who need to be quiet. Right. And then at least in my mind, and then on the other side, you have people who are saying, no, this is not good. This is unjust. It's unfair. It's not okay. Right. And it
Yeah.
may be legal now, but it's wrong. And here's why. And here's what I'm doing to work to rectifying that. Right.
Right.
Here's what I'm doing in my own life. Right. Because to me, it really comes back to the idea of, do you like, value someone by what they produce, right?
Mhm.
What does their life look like, and what does their life look like, and if that's consistent with the message of them identifying a problem, then I'm all ears and I'm all in, so
Mhm.
for me there's an important distinction there, and the unfortunate thing is I think the louder voice in most cases is the former and not the latter, and I think that's where more divisiveness can come in, because like let's just,
Yeah.
what we're talking about is like, racial segregation in the past has created inner city pockets that do not have the same resources, primarily inner city pockets that do not have the same resources, which then further perpetuates a
Mhm.
problem. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it's sort of like, what framework are you coming from? Because for me, I'll never be able to account for individual differences. They're every person sort of has their own commitments in life, right?
Hmm.
What they're willing to work towards, what they're not. You're going to see differences within groups, across groups. So there are going to be individual differences. I guess, if coming from sort of a solutions-based approach, I'm like, I'm going to look systemically, and I'm going to say, what are the barriers that need to be removed? What are the, ultimately, what are sort of the built-in biases and disparities that have been created? Let's fix it at the root. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, I'm not talking about equality of outcomes, but I'm saying, if we know structurally that we actually have some things built in that are inhibiting equality of opportunity, to me, it's remove those. And I'm not necessarily concerned about pointing to specific individuals to say what they are or they aren't doing. I think I feel the responsibility and onus to say, I am aware that there is something structural built in and embedded that is going to continue to impact people.
Hmm.
And so that's where I find my motivation and commitment leaning. And I think, everyone sort of looks at this differently and approaches it differently. But for me, if I'm trying to address a problem, a challenge, I'm going to try to get to the source of it. And I don't think I get to the source of it by pointing to that individual or that individual and trying to determine what made the difference. I'm like, I'm going to look at what's happening systemically. What,
Hmm.
when there's like an ailment, like, I'm not going to treat one symptom. I'm trying to figure out what is the actual diagnosis here, and what do we need to be working towards.
And that's the only way to make change. If we fight the symptoms, and that's the entire purpose of our conversations here. If we fight the symptoms, we will lose each other to the fight. We will not be able to continue conversation. It's only by pursuing the core illness, the core problem, that we have any hope in engaging in any type of conversation. And I kind of regret in the beginning of the show setting it up like, oh, we may be really spicy. I do think that there will be times that we're passionate, but really what you're going to see is a genuine, authentic effort forward here.
Yeah.
And that is how I ought to have framed it, regardless of if it gets uncomfortable or passionate or what have you. And with that being said, I love the distinction you just made, because as I was thinking through the question, I saw something that said equity is a process and equality is an outcome. And I didn't like it. And the reason I didn't like it is because I think that I associate equality, as I've really thought about this, I associate equality of opportunity with equality of outcome.
Yeah.
And that to me, I think is wrong, because now you're talking about like socialism or communism. And those are not good things. They're great ideals. They're fun ideas, but in application, they're terrible. Number one killer of humans in human history. So it's like, and if I may just real quick, because there's an important distinction that I have not added the context to yet. The distinction you made that I think is really important, and is you can't account for the individual, right? But you can account for the systematic problem, and you can work to fix at the root. And I think that if we focus on justice and fairness, and even those words are so charged, like goodness gracious. But if you focus on making a system, creating solutions at the system level that are just and fair, then you're going to have a more equitable system. And through that pursuit, you can pursue the ideal of equality of opportunity, but you don't want to force equal opportunity, because that is a difference and the implications of it are different. I think it's an ideal to pursue through creating equitable systems. And then that allows for the accounting of the individual so that they can choose to pursue the life that they want. Did I do well at that? Did it make sense what I said, or is it rambling?
Yeah, I think so. But let me just clarify. Are you saying we want to pursue the ideal of equality of opportunity or equality of outcomes? Which one were you saying we want to pursue the ideal of?
Definitely not equality of outcome.
Because would that be a bad outcome? What would that be bad if we were? I think it's an ideal. I don't know that that's ever possible to realize, but would it be bad?
As humans are, I think it's wrong. If we all had the same drive, the same desire to learn, to take ownership, to live fully, then I think it's great. And in the course, and I think that's at a holistic level. Because when I think equality of outcome, I think forced equality of outcome, right?
Yeah.
My association is the guy or gal who sacrificed a tremendous amount to whatever they have, whether it be little or a lot, but it's more than this person and it be taken from them, right? That's what I think of when I think of equality of outcome. Now, so I have a hard time disassociating that.
I just think it would be a wonderful experiment to see if we removed barriers, what might the outcomes be? And to me, I don't want to control it. It would just be a wonderful experiment to see. We've never done it. And I would actually love to see, because I know that when I think about the talent and potential that has been lost due to our own efforts, like we literally have put up intentional barriers. I think that's just tragic.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying is different though. So what I'm hearing is if we remove barriers, right, and we don't limit what can come from that, power on, right? That's different.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But that's, and I think that's where maybe there's a perspective difference or a linguistics difference. I really struggle when I hear like equality of outcome. I really have a hard time not associating that with like communistic ideology.
I don't know what it's associated with. I'm not putting it in a box. All I'm saying is, hey, I've got, I'll just think about like, if I have two children, right? I'm going to set them up and I'm going to provide you with these opportunities. I'm not going to stand in their way. And I'm going to just be like, let me see them step into those opportunities with the talents and gifts and the specific callings that they have on their lives. I'm not trying to direct that. And I'd love to see what the outcomes are. So I'm not saying, I'm saying it's this ideal of equality of opportunity or outcomes that I don't think we've given ourselves a chance to even see what can be possible. So it's not attainable. I'm not saying that this is the thing I'm actually seeking and that the pursuit is about ensuring that we have equality of outcomes. What I'm saying is, let's just set that up as the bar. Why don't we have like the highest bar and remove the barriers, and then let's just see what can come of that.
And that goes, so really listening to what you just said, going back to your first question of, are you talking about equality of outcome or equality of opportunity? What I'm hearing and what you're saying is equality of opportunity. If we remove the barriers and we encourage through education that you are capable of extraordinary things, if you take ownership, if you learn, if you strive, if you sacrifice, if you work, and let's see where you can go. And let's get out of the way. To me, that's pursuing the ideal of equality of opportunity through making sure that the resources are there and it's equitable.
Definitely. And my hypothesis is just that we're going to see more equality of outcomes. I'm not saying we're going to get there to this total equality of outcomes, but I'm just saying you set up for equality of opportunity. I think you're going to see at least the gap close.
So I do not disagree with you.
But you're troubled.
No, I have it may be a linguistic difference, so I'm just going to say it, but I'm not sure that it's an equality of outcome. I just think we're going to see a tremendously higher value output. We're going to see value created. Absolutely. Value creation is exponentially going to explode. And to me, that's what I'm hearing. And that's what I think. I'm like, heck yeah. Like, it's asinine to me. And I realized that I was given a really unique perspective on how humans work together in this country from my time in the military. I loved it. Every organization has its flaws, but I loved, at least for what I had control in the experiences that I had, to have the opportunity to see the removal of a lot of those things, and it's up to the person's choice. A removal, like just the freedom of, hey, you can quite literally rise to whatever level you choose to work to obtain, period, end of story, once you're in uniform. And so in my mind, I can see that, and I saw amazing things, but the problem was some of the fights were just in the person's own mind from the scars they carried, and it was education, it was conversation that spoke life to, and then educate people who needed or wanted or were willing to learn, that would become a catalyst for them to accomplish more. And I don't know, I can't help but think, as we attack, like as a society, if we're the connection, I think, to what we can do on the individual level, as there are movements to correct the system, is through the power of knowledge and education in the story we tell. And that, to me, is where I struggle. And I was thinking about our earlier conversation around pride in America, right? And the American ideal. And I think that, and I've been struggling with it, and I struggle with how can we afford not to teach people to be proud of what can become through this ideal, because it's through that excitement that we can continue to pursue its fruition, and I know that we talked about the place that we came to, that we had agreement in, was, we both have hope for the further creation of the further bringing forth of equity and correcting things. So it's like, oh, we have impoverished districts of schools where kids are growing up and not learning nearly as well, and that's creating a cycle. Let's fix that, right? Like, I'm in full agreement of that. But because of that, I'm even more proud of my country. And being someone who looks to the future and who desires to learn from the past to make action in the future, action in the present, to help make a brighter future, I'm tremendously like it strengthens my love and passion for what can be and the sacrifices that have been. And that's not without disliking and hating the wrong that has occurred. It's just, I think there's something, I think that it's part of the story, right? It's part of the narrative to help empower
It
our
is.
people to greater things.
Yeah, and I mean, if I'm hearing you correctly, and I guess I would agree to some extent. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that we can sort of identify and then address those remaining barriers. I guess though, there's a shelf life to that. I'm only going to remain proud for so long, but if you continue to allow, the inequality to persist, I'm not proud of that anymore, because then that's a choice. I mean, we're talking about choices, or that's a choice. Like if we've
Mhm.
known for some time that this needs to be fixed and it hasn't been, we are choosing to ensure that we are limiting the potential of some. That's not something that I can be proud of.
And
Uh,
I don't think that should be something to be proud of. I and this is where this is such an interesting conversation, because I was thinking about like the story of our family, right? And how my grandfather, your father, and your ma came here and built an amazing life, and how the values that they instilled in you and the gratefulness for the opportunity that they were able to find here, looking at where you are now, looking at where your brother and your sister are, like, to me, it's an inspiring thing, not to cover up the things that need corrected, but to find motivation and hope in, right? Like your, you know, your personal story and our family story has given me an additional very close connection to what can happen with the American dream. And that is a further foundation that encourages me to fight for the protection of that and against the things that are wrong. Now, the problem that comes to me is, yes, in education, the example that you've brought up, we need to face this. And I'm not surprised in a large system with people that we have a problem, and we have people who are going to fight vehemently to defend that problem. That doesn't surprise me. What I don't know is how to address it and fix it. And, a lot of things are changing in my life where I'm becoming significantly more pointed and speaking out and fighting for what I think is true, just, and fair and good holistically. I want to pause
yeah.
and just see what you think about what I said. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. I guess I'm thinking about, our family story, and yeah, it's, I'm the child of immigrants, and there was definitely instilled in me this, notion, you come here, you have every opportunity available, you work hard. It's a beautiful and tragic story all at once, and I and I
Hmm.
and I think it's important to understand it's both,
Yeah.
right? I think we love to elevate and sort of give this inspirational kind of picture of what it is. I mean, it's struggle, and it can obscure. I think it can really obscure the fact that we still have some work to do, not taking away from the fact that yes, my parents attained, some level of success, and depends on how you define success. I think for my father, the fact that he could have a job was success,
Mhm.
right? Other people would have looked at our bank account and probably said, no, that's failure. So I don't know, it's all relative. All I can
Mhm.
say is that um, yes, I believe that story, that narrative is part of the beauty and the fabric of our country. But I get concerned when we don't also acknowledge that there was a ceiling too on what my father could achieve with the limited formal education that he had. There was a ceiling on what he could achieve. And, when we have a longer episode, I can talk about some of the very racialized experiences that he had. And I can speak to some of the nuances of that story. So I think that it's yes, embrace the story. Yes, embrace the narrative and the hope that it really, I think, exemplifies. and possibilities that it demonstrates. But I worry when we lean so heavily into that and we point to specific individuals and point to specific individual stories. And again, it's just sort of this, I think we haven't been courageous in doing the harder work.
I agree with you. The thing that scares me is the adverse, the opposite. Since I can't speak, apparently, if we focus too much on the ceiling, if we focus too heavily on the wrongs that were, and if we allow anything bad to become our only picture, right, it becomes as damaging, if not, it becomes corrosive in the same way that ignoring them does.
I have a real good solution to that. We don't have to continue to tell the jokes. We can fix it. Well, I would love, like, here's the bottom line for me. I don't want to have to tell the other story. I don't want to have to keep leaning into the history. The reason I keep bringing the history is because we act as though it doesn't impact the current. That's actually why I lean so heavily on the history, is because it's sort of like, but that was the past. No, yeah, I understand racial restrictive covenants were the past, but you didn't fix the part that actually mattered. That actually means that we are going to have schools that are resourced in a way that everyone has equal opportunity. So it's not the past. If it was truly the past, it could be let go, but it's actually not truly the past.
It's I can't help but think that the more equal opportunity is definitely the ideal. I like the idea of equitable opportunity, right? Fair and just opportunity. That was just a fun idea, and it's an aside. I don't want to distract from what you're saying. And in this conversation, what we're talking about, I'm fully on board of, like, yes, one of the metaphors that we've talked about is, like, I have a lens and perspective, and you do, and that's true of any two people. And we want to look at these things that we're talking about through, like, the frame and lens of both of our perspectives. And I think it's equally tragic to look at the American dream that is hope inspiring. It's something to be proud of. It's something, I think, unequivocally to be proud of this country for, and what we can do with it. It is equally tragic to then just focus on that and not focus on the hard work to make it better. Like, to me, that is incredibly wrong. And it goes against everything that I stand for, to say, yeah, let's ignore the problems because they may or may not be affecting me directly, and this place is great. That's wrong. That's not what that's not what this is about.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the bottom line really is, it's not about making history a reference point for the sake of just retelling a painful story or a story of victimhood. It's literally, let's recount our history because our history is in our midst and it is impacting the day to day. And my goal is to really address at the root. Can we resolve it, fix it once and for all, and then move on? But you can't move on if we haven't really been honest about I think why we're in the place that we're in, why we see disparities. I think we like to attribute. So I think here's part of the challenge for me. I think we like to hold up a person's life and look at where they are and then say, and make assumptions about how they arrived there. I think that we have done a poor job of doing the same kind of analysis systemically. And so what happens is we attribute meaning and value to an individual's particularities, right? What are their outcomes? What are their life experiences? What do I see as the fruits, right, of their life? I would like to see us do the same kind of assessment and to look more deeply at what contributing factors might we have sort of created systemically.
I don't think we should just like to do. I think it's our responsibility. I think it's every American's responsibility to do that. There's this interesting part from the Declaration of Independence, and it's much more eloquently said than this. I'm going to look up the direct sentence and I can share it. But the bottom line idea is if there's something wrong and you have the capability to act, it's your responsibility to do so.
Right.
Right. And I'm in agreement. And I'm just thinking, if we look at our country as a farmer would a crop or a farm or a business owner with their business, right? You would absolutely, in good stewardship and responsibility, look at everything from the systematic level to see how you can help the whole thrive, right? That's what makes sense. And at least from those perspectives. And I think that's what makes sense. And that's what I definitely advocate for our country, which is one heck of a lofty idea to look at something so large. But I'm like, hey, if not me, then who? And I know that's your stance too. And I can't help but ask the question, like, I can't help but think we have found a path in front of us through this conversation. I think we've carefully looked at some of the presuppositions that without exploring like we just did, we could get hung up on the, oh, you're not proud of America, or
Yeah.
oh, you don't see the problem and all that jazz. I think we've crushed that. And looking forward, I'm like, heck, I want to pull on the string of, okay, so what's next? What can we do on the individual level? What types of conversations can we inspire? What types of actions can we take? What can we build here, right? Maybe this is just a platform for us to build something that we've not yet imagined, or maybe it'll encourage someone to do so who just has needed this. But I can't help but feel a gratitude and excitement right now for
That's
where our
awesome.
conversations become. I don't know where you're feeling. Hopefully not indigestion, but
No, 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 not at all. I mean, I think just as I've been sitting here and just having this conversation, one thing that really became clear to me is that we speak from different paradigms for sure. And I feel like I hear you speaking a lot from the individual and the individual stories. And I think I'm speaking a lot from a systems approach. And I think a lot of times when we're trying to tackle these big um, these big challenges, right? We're coming at it from different, we're just coming at it from different perspectives. And so it is difficult to find a space where we find that common ground and agreement and a way forward. And so I don't know, I hope at least from today's conversation, you and I and others might be sort of seeing the necessity of the both and that, yeah, we can look at the individual and we can assess and diagnose from that vantage point. But what might we also gain from looking at the systemic level? And then also, not being so frustrated by a sense that people are trying to languish in a history that doesn't exist anymore. But what can we take from our history and apply to our understanding of the present? And I think this both and, as opposed to it's got to be an either or, is the secret sauce. So
100%. It has to be both and, because if you just look at the system level, it can become flawed. If you just look at it at the individual level, it is not a whole picture. And that's where I think that we're two sides to an equation to help solve this. We need to see both the individual and the system if we want to be able to create a solution, because it's the fuller picture, right? The different paradigms we have don't create division. They create greater value if we're just willing to be bold enough to push to find it. And what I'm excited about now, and the reason I have excitement, especially with what you just said, is our following conversations are going to be aimed at building value towards creating solutions. There's nowhere else for us to go.
exactly. Why would we want to do anything else?